Hi everyone and welcome to Joe Reviews. I recently added a new smart lock to my house, the Yale Approach lock. This is Yale's first retrofit smart lock, which means that you can keep the deadbolt portion of the lock and your keys. This retrofit option is great for renters since the keys stay the same and you're not replacing the whole lock. Since it's just the outside of the lock being replaced, installation is easier. Yale states this can be done in a few minutes. Setup definitely took longer for me since there were a couple things that tripped me up, which hopefully you can avoid. This is my second Yale Smart Lock model. I also have two of the Yale Assured 2 locks, which I've been using for just over a year. I did a review on those, which is linked in the description, and so far those locks have been excellent. Alright, so let's get into this Yale Approach lock. First, I'll briefly cover unboxing and go over the setup. Upon opening the box, you'll find the getting started instructions on top. Then there is the lock itself. As you can see, I went with the black suede color option. This lock also comes in silver. Then above the lock is the Wi-Fi bridge, and to the side in another box are some more components for the lock and the DoorSense module. Next, it was time for installation. To get the instructions on how to install, you need to scan the QR code in the Getting Started booklet. This is the part that tripped me up. There are two codes, one on the page for the Wi-Fi bridge and another on the page for the lock. I didn't think it would matter which code I scanned. I thought that they both led to the instructions for setting up the lock. I scanned the code on the Wi-Fi bridge page, which naturally walked me through setting up the Wi-Fi bridge. However, you need to have the lock installed first before the bridge can be set up. It took me some trial and error before I figured there was another set of instructions specifically for the lock. I'm installing this lock on the door between my garage and house. Since this will be on the inside, I didn't purchase the optional wireless keypad. I'll either unlock this lock with my phone or set up keys if need be. Once I scanned the code, it took me through installing the lock step by step. The first part is actually very simple. Just unscrew your existing deadbolt thumb turn. There's some blue tape which you're supposed to use to keep the outside portion of your lock from just falling down, since it will still be used. Once that's off, then take the new lock, push the button at the bottom to separate the back plate. Then line the back plate holes with the screw holes in the deadbolt. The back plate has adjustable screw holes, which makes lining it up easy. Next, insert the screws and tighten them down. After that, I selected the adapter that worked with my lock and installed it. I had already removed the plastic tab in the batteries. Finally, I attached the front part of the smart lock and rotated it to the lock position. Next, I needed to install the DoorSense module. There are two options for installing DoorSense. It can be surface mounted, which is the easier install option, but then you have this visible module sticking out, or it can be flush mounted inside the door frame. Like my other locks from Yale, I went with the flush mount option as I prefer the cleaner look. First, I removed the magnet from the surface mount module and installed it into the flush mount module. Then, I needed to drill the hole for the flush mount module. To do this, it required a 5/8 inch spade bit. I tried first using a 9/16 inch bit, since I saw a lot of comments from people saying the 5/8 was too large, and the DoorSense module would just fall out. However, with the 9/16, the hole was too small, and I couldn't get the module to squeeze in. I used the 5/8 inch spade bit to make it a little larger. It ended up being a bit too big, just like the other comments stated. The magnet would stick to the door, taking the module out of the hole I just drilled. I've seen some videos where people used a piece of scrap wood to keep the module snug. I just used some Gorilla Glue and that did the trick. After that, in the app, it scanned for the new lock. Then it updated the firmware and calibrated the lock to work with DoorSense. This allows the app to know when the door is open or closed. After this, I had to plug in the Wi-Fi bridge and set that up in the app. This process simply entails the bridge connecting to your Wi-Fi and then testing the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connection to the lock. This takes a couple of minutes to complete. After the connection is established, setup is complete. Lastly, I changed the name of this lock from front door to garage/house door to better identify it. Overall, setup is fairly simple. I just made the mistake of missing what instructions to scan first. I also wish they would come up with a better way to install the flush mount method of the DoorSense module, since it will just fall out of the hole using the recommended spade bit size. Although if you're someone who is renting, then you'll probably just stick with the surface mount option anyways. As I mentioned, I have a couple other locks from Yale, the Assured 2s. The one thing I didn't care about them was how bulky the lock is on the inside of the door. It's just very thick and not the best looking. However, with this Yale Approach lock, it looks like it's been dieting because it's really thinned out. In part because it doesn't have the built-in wireless module like the Assured 2 has, which there lies one of the trade-offs with this lock. It has a thinner design, but then you have to install the Wi-Fi bridge nearby. Another design feature I like is the glowing ring around the deadbolt knob. It lights up green when unlocking and red for locking. When the lock is doing a firmware update, the whole ring lights up white. Pricing for this lock is reasonable at $130. There are also options to purchase this lock with 2 available keypads. With the newly available fingerprint access keypad, the lock costs $100 more at $230. Otherwise, you can purchase the keypad and lock without fingerprint access for $180. The fingerprint option would be the most convenient option, but is it worth the steeper price tag? I think it depends on how much you'd actually plan on using the keypad to unlock your door versus your phone or the auto unlock feature, which I'll discuss later on. Each keypad uses 4 AA batteries, as does the lock itself. If you get the lock and keypad option, you could be changing quite a bit of batteries. Although since the lock and keypad are separated, the battery life is expected to last around 12 months for the lock and 7 months for the keypad, which is much better than the 3 months listed lifespan on my Assure 2 locks, which, as a side note, has been less than that in my experience. Some people might be disappointed to have to use a bridge with this lock instead of having Wi-Fi built directly into it. I personally don't mind it too much. I have the bridge plugged into an outlet nearby in the hallway, and I feel like I barely notice it. I could even plug it into an outlet in the nearby laundry room to hide it more, but I prefer to have it nearby where I can see it. There is a status light on it that lights up green when unlocking or locking the lock. Otherwise, it's fairly compact and discreet. As for features and controlling the lock through the app, it's all the same as Yale's other locks. The app is simple to use. When opening the app on the main page, there's a large circle that shows the status of your lock. You can click on the circle to either lock or unlock your selected door. It also shows if the door is open or closed. By swiping to the left or right, you can cycle through your other locks to see the status and control them. You can also change the order in which your locks are displayed. Then there's an activity feed. If you set up multiple users, you can see who's opening and locking the door, as well as when they are doing so. When manually locking or unlocking the front door, it won't show the user, just the timestamp. Next, there is the guest list. Here you can invite someone to have access to the app, or if you have the keypad, you can send a temporary code for unlocking the door. You can then choose for how long the code will be good for. This feature is great for people who own rentals and can provide temporary codes for guests. In this tab, you'd also set up the main code for your lock. Moving on to the settings, in this section you can change the name of the lock. There's also an option to hide all entry codes from view, which is useful if you give someone access to your app, but you don't want them to see the entry code. There's also an option for verified access. With this turned on, you'll have to pass biometric security or enter passcode information on your phone first before operating the lock with your phone. Beneath that, you can adjust if the lock makes a sound when locking or unlocking. There's also a feature called Smart Alerts. This allows the user to set up alerts when certain events occur. An example would be whenever a certain user unlocks or locks the door, then you'd receive a notification. This can also be set up whenever a manual entry occurs. Might be a feature geared more towards parents trying to keep an eye on their kids. Otherwise, this isn't a feature I've really used much. Moving on to the more interesting settings are the auto lock and auto unlock features. With these features turned on, the door will auto unlock as you approach and can automatically lock after the lock has been unlocked for a certain period of time. I've always thought these features have potential to be really good. I just never found them that useful for me. Let me start with the auto lock feature. As I mentioned, once you unlock the door can be set to lock after a certain amount of time or the instant the door is shut. This is great for people who never want to have to worry about locking their door. It'll automatically lock for you without ever having to do it. The problem I always had with it is I leave and enter my house quite a bit. I don't always want it to lock after I go through the door. It's just more work to have to keep unlocking it and a good way to wear out the batteries faster. The auto unlock feature requires access to your location at all times. I think the auto lock feature would work if it went off your phone's location, detected when you got so far away from your house, and then automatically locked it. For me, this would be the better option versus having it lock right away after closing the door or after a set time. The auto unlock feature works well. As I mentioned, you do need to give Yale access to your location at all times. It sets up a 200-meter perimeter around your home, which you can move around if need be. Anytime you go outside that perimeter, it will detect that you are away. Then when you re-enter the perimeter, it will detect your home and will unlock the door when you're within a couple of feet. I think this feature works better than the auto lock feature just because it goes off of your location versus timing. If you're coming home and your arms are filled with groceries, it's nice that you don't have to set your stuff down and get out your keys or enter the passcode. The only negative with the auto unlock is sharing your location with Yale at all times. I'm not a fan of that, but if you want the benefit of auto unlock, you will have to give up that information. Other than those two features, there is also door ajar timing. If you open your door and forget to close it, you will receive a notification that the door is left open. You can choose how long the door can be left open before you receive a notification, anywhere from 1 minute to 30 minutes of having the door be open. It's a nice feature to have just in case you ran outside for something quick, got sidetracked, and forgot to close the door. One final thing to discuss before wrapping up is Matter support. For starters, there is none. although Yale promised it's coming. As an Apple Home user, it's not very convenient to use this lock at the moment. With my other locks, I can ask Siri to lock them or control them from the widget on my home screen. Right now, the only way I can control this lock is by going into the Yale app. It does play nicely with Amazon Alexa and Hey Google, so if you use those services, then this won't be a problem for you. I haven't heard when Matter is supposed to come to this lock, but hopefully it's soon. In the end, I am happy with this Yale Approach smart lock. It's price reasonable, loaded with the same smart features as their more expensive locks, and is ideal for renters and rental property owners. The battery life is impressive compared to my other smart locks. I like the thin design, and it blends in well with my door. While I'm still not a fan of the auto lock feature, the auto unlock works well if you can live with giving up your location information. Also, just as I mentioned, if you're an avid Apple Home user, then the lack of Matter makes using this lock a bit more inconvenient for now. Other than those couple of faults, if you're someone looking to upgrade your regular lock to a smart lock, I'd recommend giving the Yale Approach a try. It just has many great features at a reasonable price. That's it for my review. If you have any questions or thoughts on this lock, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching, please subscribe, and I'll catch you for the next review.